All right, we're back on live now. Thanks, everybody. Sorry about that. For those of you just tuning in, we were talking about the tropics and what's going on with Invest 97L, and now we're going to be talking a little more about what's happening with the flooding out in the Midwest right now. So, for those of you just jumping back on, thanks for being patient. And I apologize for whatever reason our live ended there for just a second, but we are back now. And just waiting for a few more of you to jump on as we talk what's happening out there tonight with some of the tropics and then also the flooding. So if you're just joining the live, if you're just tuning in, let me know where you're watching from, what the weather is where you are, and we'll wait for a couple more minutes for some folks to jump back on, and then we'll get back talking about probably a little more Midwest weather and what's happening out there. Somebody asked, moderate risk, where is this? So this is the Weather Prediction Center flash flood risk. So this is not a Storm Prediction Center map. This is a Weather Prediction Center map, and it's valid through tonight to tomorrow. And then we have another moderate risk for flooding tomorrow as well for another round of heavy rainfall. What we're looking at right now is Iowa into parts of extreme northwest Missouri, southeast Nebraska. That moderate risk, it's a 3 out of 4 with the Weather Prediction Center. It goes all the way into northwest Illinois and parts of Wisconsin as well. So far tonight, there hasn't been a ton of flooding. In fact, there's been a little bit more severe weather versus flooding, but still, I think through tonight, as a low-level jet stream starts to kick in a little bit, we see some outflow boundaries that are starting to come into play here as well, and some really rich moisture over the Midwest. The chance of flooding is going to start to ramp up, and a lot of the times, more often than not, when we talk about these overnight flood events, the short-range computer models, the higher resolution stuff, has a hard time picking up on exactly how it's going to play out. So yeah, what you're looking at right now, this is a Weather Prediction Center map. And remember, with the Weather Prediction Center, their flash flood risk, it goes 1 through 4. It's not like the Storm Prediction Center where they have a 1 through 5 risk. And right now there is a 3 out of 4, which is a moderate risk, still in red, moderate risk for flooding overnight tonight. And some big cities included in this as well. Omaha, Des Moines at play here, Cedar Rapids, all the way through Madison, Wisconsin, Milwaukee in the slight risk for flooding. And the forecast for tonight, there's a couple of different variables that are coming into play here when we talk about the flooding risk overnight tonight and then again tomorrow. So a few things to look at. Number one, we do have a stationary boundary, which is sort of draped across the Midwest right now, in an area of low pressure, which has departed away from our stationary boundary. So it's sort of just left it hanging here. Right now, this surface map has it placed from central Kansas northward into eastern Nebraska, northwest Iowa, through parts of central Minnesota. I think it's maybe a little further east than that, closer to where my yellow line is drawn. But you have the surface boundary, and you're going to have showers and thunderstorms that are going to be riding along that surface boundary overnight tonight through Sunday. There's also an outflow boundary that's left over from today's showers and thunderstorms here across parts of Iowa through Wisconsin. And near that outflow boundary, we're going to get more thunderstorms that are going to be popping up overnight tonight. On top of that, we have an extremely rich air mass. In fact, dew points are in the 70s, which is pretty high for the Midwest. And still, even though the sun is set, some higher instability levels, CAPE values today, which again, convective available potential energy, just a measure of enters in the atmosphere, made it all the way up to about 4,000, a little higher than that, joules per kilogram through today across the Midwest in this moderate risk for flooding, which sort of is going to play into how the flooding risk evolves overnight tonight. So notice where we have some of the heavier rain today. And right now, there's a couple of different spots. One of those here is across eastern Wisconsin. Milwaukee has some heavy rain, a flash flood warning there. And then, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, even some severe weather that has developed out across parts of central Kansas, there's a slight risk for severe weather and even a severe thunderstorm watch with numerous severe thunderstorm warnings across north central Kansas here, sort of an MCS that's starting to develop. What's going to happen overnight tonight is this line, this cluster of thunderstorms that we see that right now is working through Phillipsburg, Kansas, Smith Center, Red Cloud, heading eastward. That cluster is going to continue to kind of back build to the west and also start to organize south as well. You can even see some more activity across eastern Colorado. That will head eastward and really slow down overnight tonight and through much of our Sunday morning. And so that's going to put places like Kansas City, St. Joseph, Maryville, and then into our moderate risk zone at play here for some significant flooding. Overnight tonight, we're talking about 2 to 4, maybe 5 inches of rainfall possible. So comment where you're watching from. Would love to hear you. Would love to hear what the weather is where you are. And the two things that we've sort of been talking about tonight, both the flooding risk and then also the tropical activity, are Invest 97L, which is an area of low pressure, which is getting slightly better organized near Cape Verde, which is off the coast of Africa, well away from the country. Plenty of time to watch it, another 10 to 11 days. But there's been plenty of chatter about it on social media as well. And so wanted to talk about that, which we did a few minutes ago. But if you're watching across the Midwest, the big talk today, the big weather story has been the flooding, and not so much that we're seeing a lot of it right now, but there is going to be a better chance for heavy rainfall, heavy thunderstorms overnight tonight into tomorrow, and then even into Monday as well, with a really moisture-rich atmosphere at play here. We could be talking about several rounds of heavy thunderstorms and the chance for significant flooding. It's not very often you get 2 back-to-back moderate risk days, risk level 3 out of 4 for flash flooding for both tonight and then again tomorrow. What you're looking at right now is a moderate risk zone, 3 out of 4 in red. That's valid from tonight and into tomorrow. So places like Des Moines, Omaha, Madison, Wisconsin at play, and then we're starting to see thunderstorms developing, popping up, slow-moving stuff across eastern Wisconsin tonight. Milwaukee underneath a flash flood warning. Somebody asked, let's see, do you have the forecast for Savannah, Georgia on October 10th? Unfortunately, I think that's too far out to look. Tough to say. Hopefully the weather will be good with whatever trip that you're planning. Somebody said, look at the Hanswell severe thunderstorm warning right now. These are with these storms that are popping up out here in central Kansas. And again, I do think that there is a severe weather risk overnight tonight across north central Kansas, southern parts of Nebraska. But the bigger threat is going to be more so for the potential of flooding. But these are some mean-looking storms that are racing east. Notice there are severe thunderstorm warnings for this entire line, almost an MCS-looking area of thunderstorms. The severe thunderstorm warnings extend from the Nebraska side, near Upland, all the way south towards Kansas, Smith Center, Phillipsburg. Big line of storms. Looks like it's warned for possibly winds up to 70 miles per hour. That puts it in the considerable severe thunderstorm warning tag here. And so there could be some pretty big winds coming through there, and obviously torrential amounts of rainfall as well. Right now, this area of rain is moving east at about 40 miles per hour. And so that's a pretty good clip. It's not super slow yet. But eventually, this line, again, as I was mentioning a second ago, is going to kind of fill into the south. It's going to continue to back build. And then as it moves eastward and kind of drapes itself closer to our surface boundary here, it's also going to slow down. And so that's where the flooding risk is going to come into play. So we're going to have a few different storm clusters overnight tonight. We already have one storm cluster out here across northern Kansas, southern Nebraska. You have the winds up to 70 miles per hour as it heads towards the east. That'll fill in, continue to back build both south, and then also kind of little upscale growth to the north as well. And then through tomorrow morning, overnight tonight, and into tomorrow morning, you're going to get more showers and thunderstorms that are going to start to fire and pop up here across eastern Nebraska, through Iowa, within our moderate risk level 3 out of 4 zone for flash flooding. So far, so good tonight. Not a ton of rainfall yet across central Iowa. We are seeing some heavy rain, even a flash flood warning with some of the storms that are popping up near Milwaukee. But other than that, at least within the main corridor for severe weather, or rather flooding overnight tonight, we're not seeing a ton of action just yet. But the setup is such that we have a surface boundary again, which is right now kind of hanging out here from central Kansas all the way into eastern Nebraska, through Iowa, into Minnesota there. And that surface boundary is going to be a focal point for showers and thunderstorms. So there's one focal point for showers and storms. And then in addition to that surface boundary, we also have some outflow boundaries here from previous day showers and thunderstorms across central Iowa. That's likely where we'll see more initiation overnight tonight within this red area, that moderate risk zone. We have dew points that are in the 70s, so it's a moisture-rich atmosphere, and then still a ton of instability, even though the sun is set. Instability values today, CAPE, if you're familiar with the term, convective available potential energy, was up near about 4,000 joules per kilogram earlier today. So just explosive thunderstorm development overnight tonight within that moderate risk zone, and slow moving as well. And so that's where I think we're going to start talking a little bit more flooding risk. Let me look at some of your comments here because more of you are joining. Somebody says, hello, Chad. Hey, how are you doing? What about Michigan? It sort of depends on where you are in Michigan. But again, right now, at least for today and into tonight, doesn't look like there's a big risk for flooding. Unless you're across the far western part of the state here, you have some showers and thunderstorms that are rolling off of Lake Michigan here. And these are going to produce some heavy rain, some thunderstorms getting into Grand Rapids overnight tonight, big rapids, severe weather threat low, flooding risk looks like it's going to be low. And then I'm going to turn off the flooding risk for tonight and turn on the flooding risk for tomorrow. Again, not a huge deal for Michigan, but look at the big moderate risk zone. That's a 3 out of 4. Again, the Weather Prediction Center puts out these risks maps that you're looking at here. It's a 3 out of 4 for significant flooding for tomorrow across a big area of real estate. Similar setup, stationary boundary, outflow boundaries. That will lead to thunderstorm development. Probably again tomorrow afternoon. Some of the shorter range computer models tend to, at least historically, have a tough time picking up on some of the outflow boundary stuff. But the Weather Prediction Center says the clusters of storms that are moving through tonight out of central Kansas will race east overnight. They'll roll through Kansas City tonight, and then more redevelopment possible maybe tomorrow closer to the boundary. A stationary boundary and some outflow boundaries, and we could be talking about multiple inches of rain over a saturated ground as well. And that's the other thing with the flooding for tonight into tomorrow. Some of these places that are going to be seeing rainfall have seen rainfall the past couple of days, and it's not so much the amount. We're not talking 10, 20 inches of rain, but 3 to 6 over a saturated ground will probably lead to some flooding issues tonight and tomorrow. So it is a back-to-back risk of flooding. But at least as it stands, 11:13 here Central Time, not a ton of flash flood warnings. We do have some severe weather that we talked about across northern Kansas and southern Nebraska. Winds up to 70 miles per hour, considerable tag on those storms. But wanted to talk to you a little more about the flooding risk for tonight. Even a couple of tornado warnings earlier today, and one tornado warning now across eastern Colorado. Somebody asked, are these storms looking tornadic? That was from Luke. He asked that question. I'm in Omaha. It's supposed to get to us. I know Omaha had some wild weather last night, or at least a good part of eastern Nebraska saw some intense thunderstorms. Let's turn off for a second the excessive rainfall outlook and then just leave on our watches and warnings. Most of the storms, to answer your question, the cluster of storms that we're seeing now developing here across northern Kansas, this MCS looking feature from Phillipsburg northward into the Nebraska side, Franklin, that's producing winds to 70 miles per hour. These are not likely going to be tornadic. They'll probably produce some heavy rain, obviously torrential amounts of rain and some gusty winds up to 70 as they move eastward here. Probably won't stay severe all night either. Eventually, we'll start to run out of instability, probably as these storms get out towards Clay Center, Marysville, Lincoln. But they'll produce the heavy rainfall as they start to slow down that could lead to some of the flooding. So tornadic activity with these storms out in Kansas, into Nebraska, Iowa, Missouri, and into parts of Wisconsin, not likely. We do have one tornado warning with the more isolated storms out here in eastern Colorado. That probably has some big hail on it too. Notice the lavender magenta colors that we're picking up. Yeah, golf ball size hail, 1.75 inches on this one. This is a tornado warning right now for southwestern Kiowa and north central Bent County until 10:30. Golf ball size hail possible. Radar indicator rotation. Turn on velocity here for a second. Again, shows us how strong the winds are, where they're blowing, and where that rotation is. At least some broad rotation here, but wouldn't be surprised if there were some strong wind gusts as well. We were seeing some of the brighter greens here and reds, 60 to 70 miles per hour, and the big hail too. I'm curious. This is a tool called hydrometer classification from our NexRad product here. And you can see there probably is some hail up to that golf ball size. And this is south of Haswell, Colorado, so pretty rural area, but tornado warning still there nonetheless. So that's sort of what's happening with the storms out in the Midwest right now. Again, 2 back-to-back moderate risk days, not for severe weather, but for flash flooding. This sort of caught my eye last night. I was getting ready to go to bed and was looking over X or Twitter and saw the moderate risk days and was curious about it and wanted to talk a little bit about it. Again, it's an interesting setup. Let's turn on, again, our excessive rainfall outlook from the Weather Prediction Center here for tonight and into early tomorrow morning. Interesting setup where we have a couple of different things taking place. You have a surface boundary. We're going to see some heavy rain that'll slow down along that surface boundary. Dew points are high in the 70s. We had a lot of energy in the atmosphere today, so thunderstorms will still be able to tap into some of that, even though the sun is set. And then we also have some outflow boundaries left over from previous day thunderstorms across Iowa and into northwest Illinois. So let's show you kind of what the rest of the night will hold with some of these thunderstorms. And I'll pull this a little closer to you so you can see it. All right, so this is the HER, and this is the 020 run. So this isn't one of our main runs here, but regardless, I think sometimes some of the convective allowing models have a tough time picking up on the outflow boundary activity that might develop overnight tonight in Iowa, but it is showing and it is picking up on one or more clusters or an MCS of strong to severe thunderstorms over the next couple of hours across northern Kansas down through southern Nebraska. And that'll likely stay severe. We're seeing wind gusts up to 70 right now for the next hour or two. And then I think it drops below severe status as we get closer to 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. But then it slows down even more as it heads out towards Topeka, into northeast Kansas, southern Nebraska. So we start to lose the severe status, but the rainfall rates start to pick up. The storms slow down. This is where the flooding risk comes into play. We're still, at least according to this piece of data, dry across Iowa through early tomorrow morning. I don't know if I completely buy that. I think we'll start to see thunderstorms developing over the next couple of hours here across southern to southeast Iowa, along outflow boundaries, near outflow boundaries, from earlier day thunderstorm activity. But regardless, here comes one or more lines of storms or bowing segments of storms that are not quite as severe as they head into eastern Kansas overnight. but they start to produce higher rainfall rates. And then here's early tomorrow morning. So this is now getting closer to sunrise. Storms are not severe as they get closer to, say, Kansas City, St. Joseph, but they're producing a lot of rainfall. And then the storms really start to blossom. I think there'll already be thunderstorm activity developing over the next few hours here across central into southeastern Iowa. Another round, we're probably talking 3 to 4 rounds, moving into central eastern Iowa tomorrow morning into early tomorrow afternoon. And that's where the flooding risk continues to build and comes into play here. And then it isn't necessarily highlighted just yet by the Weather Prediction Center in terms of a major risk for flooding, but let's keep an eye on down through south central Kansas, southeast Kansas, southwest Missouri, as number one, we could be impacted by the storms that are developing out there tonight. Most of them weaken as they move in by here's sunrise, getting into 10, 11, 12 tomorrow afternoon. But some of the other short-range guidance here, including this is the 0Z HER, does pick up on some pretty intense thunderstorms developing tomorrow night into Monday morning across southern Kansas, into southeast Missouri, southwest Missouri, maybe up to Kansas City, into central Missouri. Those may be strong to possibly severe with some winds up to 60 miles per hour, but bigger concern would be for high rainfall rates and some flooding. I think we're going to see a lot of flash flooding between now and on Monday with the multiple rounds of storms from Kansas, Nebraska, Iowa, Illinois, Wisconsin, Missouri, stationary boundary at play here. We have outflow boundaries at play, high dew points, and at least from today, we had some really high instability values in there as well. And so, yeah, we have a moderate risk for tonight for flooding, another moderate risk coming into the forecast for tomorrow as well. Kate says, I'm stuck at Chicago's airport due to storms, and Milwaukee apparently is having lots of flooding. Another, person asked if tonight is going to be as bad as last night in Omaha. So let's take those one by one. Let's first start kind of by looking at what's happening with the storms out in Chicago. We'll pull our radar back up here, and I'm going to turn off, again, just for a second, the excessive rainfall outlook. We'll turn on the radar from Chicago and show you what's happening. So it's dry in Chicago, but look at the storms up in Milwaukee. You mentioned there was a lot of reports of flooding and activity up there. Check this out. Heavy amounts of rain have kind of developed and are redeveloping, training over the same locations here across southern parts of Wisconsin. Milwaukee, one of the spots that is seeing tremendous thunderstorm activity, really high rainfall rates probably with some of this, and a lot of lightning as well. So a flash flood warning right now for the Milwaukee metro area. This extends north towards Whitefish Bay, also west Brookfield, if you're familiar with the area. Show you rainfall so far with this cluster of storms. This is the storm total precip, and we can sample some of this stuff. Check it out. A lot of rain. This is just within the past few hours, a couple different corridors of maybe 4 to 5 inches of rainfall. One of those just north of Milwaukee near Glendale, and then another south of downtown Milwaukee, Greenfield, West Dales, West Milwaukee, picked up on, again, estimated 4, maybe as high as 5 inches of rain. And this is an interesting thing about some of these flooding events that you see, and it's almost a common theme when it comes to flash flooding during the summer. Short range, high resolution computer models have a challenging time picking up on them. What we're seeing right now with the flooding in Wisconsin, it is within the slight risk 2 out of 4 zone defined by the Weather Prediction Center, but it isn't that main corridor where we have the moderate risk. It's just outside of there. And yet it's the spot tonight that we're seeing repeated rounds of heavy rainfall, a cluster of storms that's producing efficient rainfall rates, and a lot of this stuff continues to back build and probably will for the next few hours. Another question that I got a second ago that I want to answer before I move on to some of the other comments was about Nebraska, specifically Omaha, and what the forecast looks like overnight tonight there. First of all, let's show you what the radar looks like in Omaha. Things are dry for the time being, but there's more than likely going to be some heavy rain tonight and through tomorrow morning as well. Excessive rainfall outlook does bring that moderate risk corridor. That's a 3 out of 4 for excessive rainfall right through the Omaha metro. And then it's drawn to the south and southwest of there as well. Severe weather is possible, but the biggest concern overnight tonight in Omaha is going to be for very heavy rainfall. That's probably going to lead to flooding concerns somewhere within this moderate risk zone. And Omaha is definitely at play. Notice where we have activity that has developed here over the last 30 to 45 minutes across southern Nebraska, Fairbury, near Geneva, a couple of scattered showers and thunderstorms, and then a big line of storms out to the west of Red Cloud and Smith Center on the Kansas side, Red Cloud on the Nebraska side. This line will head east here over the next few hours, and more than likely is going to impact Omaha. It'll kind of build to the north and build to the south as well. So heavy amounts of rainfall coming into Omaha and most of southern Nebraska by 4 to 5 a.m. Again, some of this could be strong with some winds to 60 miles per hour, but more than likely the line's going to slow down. It'll lose its severe status. You might be woken up early tomorrow morning. Here's 4 or 5 a.m., big line of storms, potentially producing rainfall that could lead to flooding. Same deal for Lincoln. Lincoln's not seeing any rainfall right now, but storms are developing to your south, Maddie, and then overnight tonight, we're going to have several rounds of rain come through. You have storms to your south, that line out to the west comes through 3, 4, 5, 6 a.m. If it slows down, it could lead to more flooding concerns in there as well. A question about Manhattan, Kansas, and what's happening there. So biggest risk for flooding overnight tonight, probably going to stay just north of Manhattan. That's where we have the big line of storms here across north central Kansas. There is a severe thunderstorm watch that's in effect right now. Not sure if it includes Manhattan. Let's turn on the watches. This is a severe thunderstorm watch that's out until 4 o'clock in the morning for anywhere that you see shaded in orange. And this does include Manhattan. Greatest threat for severe storms tonight stays probably just north of Manhattan. And as we've been talking here on live, it's becoming evident that this is going to be our main show in terms of a heavy rainfall and flooding risk. This cluster of storms, big line of storms out near Smith Center and Red Cloud. It's going to slow down as it propagates east. It'll probably expand both to the north and to the south. And then I think by the time it gets to Manhattan, Marysville, Lincoln, the severe weather threat starts to decrease, but the flooding threat will start to ramp up even more. Really high dew points, high Watts measure of moisture in the atmosphere is extremely high. And so that's where I think the flooding risk is going to come into play tonight and tomorrow. Let's see. I saw a comment here. Kate says she's going to be stuck at the airport for a while with the storms up in Milwaukee, more than likely. Dalton asks, is the red a moderate risk? Yeah, that red that I was showing you is a moderate risk for flooding, not for severe weather, but for flooding that's going to come into play overnight tonight. So if you're just joining the live, thanks so much for tuning in. I'd love to hear where you're tuning in from, and also any weather questions that you have. The two things that we talked about tonight, I started the live talking about what's happening out in the tropics because things are starting to heat up there. And then we're also talking about kind of a dual risk tonight for severe weather, but more so flooding. And that flooding risk is going to carry over into Monday as well. We have 2 back-to-back days of flooding risks across the Midwest, and those flooding risks are going to be significant at times. Somebody asked about the Kansas City area. So right now, no active severe thunderstorm watch for Kansas City. The better chance of any severe weather overnight tonight stays well west of KC. But the flooding risk is definitely there. There's a flash flood watch that's in effect for Kansas City. And as we look at the flooding potential overnight tonight, and we'll turn on again, this is the day one outlook from the Weather Prediction Center. This is valid through early tomorrow morning. KC here is in a marginal risk level 1 out of 4 for flash flooding, but that doesn't really tell the complete story, because as soon as we get towards tomorrow, daylight hours tomorrow, the risk for flooding goes up there. In terms of a categorical risk, we have a moderate risk zone drawn up, 3 out of 4 for Kansas City, the entire KC Metro for tomorrow. So the way this is probably going to work out is the lines of storms that we're seeing developing here across north central Kansas, southern Nebraska, storms developing here, individual little storms across southern Nebraska out ahead of our main line. Those will continue to fill in, and then we're going to get one or more main lines of storms, or a couple of different areas of storms that'll push through the KC Metro late tonight, early tomorrow morning. If it slows down, it'll bring in an even bigger risk of rainfall. So mainly for rain, not severe, is what we're looking at to answer that question. Yes. Let's talk for a second about what's happening out in the tropics. I'm curious if any of you are watching from any of the East Coast states, perhaps from Florida, maybe from Georgia, any of the Carolinas. I'd love to hear if anybody's watching from there. There's a lot of talk about the tropics. This flooding event out in the Midwest hasn't really taken place yet. We have the moderate risk for tonight, moderate risk for tomorrow. A couple of severe thunderstorm warnings out there for our MCS that has developed across northern Kansas and southern Nebraska. But there is a lot happening in the tropics, not so much in terms of impacts to the U.S. over the next 5 to 10 days, but just in terms of a much busier Atlantic compared to where we ended things in July. And this is peak season, so it makes sense that things are starting to heat up a little bit more. What you're looking at right now is the Atlantic basin as a whole, and I think on TikTok you have the kind of a snapshot of the eastern half of the Atlantic basin. We have a couple tropical waves out there. We have one tropical wave in the central Atlantic. You can see some of the higher convection and thunderstorm tops that are ongoing out there tonight. With this tropical wave, we'll call it tropical wave number 1. There was talk about what was going to happen with this one 3 or 4 days ago on social media. That one is going to curve out to sea. It's going to turn north-northeastward. And the reason why is because of a ridge of high pressure that we have out here in the east central Atlantic. Pretty strong ridge right now. Remember, a high pressure system has a clockwise flow. And so the stronger the ridge this high pressure is, the more these tropical waves are going to follow its flow, which with a clockwise flow turns our tropical wave number 1 out here in the central Atlantic to the north-northeast, more of a fish storm. Now, there's another tropical wave that has a little more buzz right now. This is 97L. It's gotten a designation as of late this afternoon, and I'll circle it so you can see it. It's moved off the coast of Africa, now approaching the Cape Verde Islands, and it looks pretty healthy. There are some really tall thunderstorm tops in here, and there's a bit of a spin as well. So we have that designation of Invest 97L. Invest means we're just paying a little closer attention to it. So let's show you a closer look at our area of interest here. And check this out. I think this is always really interesting. You can see the wave moving off the coast of Africa, moving westward into the open Atlantic here through the day today. And you can almost see that counterclockwise spin, the low pressure center to it that's been trying to form as it moves westward towards the Cape Verde Islands. So National Hurricane Center sees this one as well. They're watching it closely. And yesterday, when we first saw this wave coming off of Africa, moving into the Atlantic, we had a low chance of development. Now, the Hurricane Center sees this little spin. They've given it the designation, and they've increased the chance of development here down the road. Over the next 48 hours, that's 2 days, only a 10% chance of development with this one. However, as we get towards the 7-day period, that chance increases to a medium or a 60%. That's why you see the orange blob here. And you can see the area that they've circled. That doesn't necessarily represent the track of where this spin tropical wave is going to go. But what it does show is where we think development could take place over the next 7 days. Then after that is where we start to determine the track a little bit more. So with that being said, it's obviously extremely challenging to tell this far out where this wave is going to go, but it has some attention because environmental conditions out here in the Atlantic are pretty favorable as we get towards Monday and beyond. So more than likely, we're probably going to have tropical storm, maybe Hurricane Erin on our hands. Here's the intensity model for this tropical wave, Invest 97L, with that little spin out there that we see moving off the coast of Africa. Over the next 48 hours, unlikely we get anything major from this. Could get a tropical depression, but once we get beyond that 48-hour period, we're now talking hour 72, 84, beyond the weekend into early next week. Some of these computer models, the hurricane models, which are now running because we have the designation of Invest 97L, take this up to Cat 1, maybe Cat 2 status by the middle to end of next week, and possibly can't be ruled out that we get into major hurricane status. Obviously, still too far out to actually determine whether or not we're going to get a major hurricane, but like I said, it's peak season, can't be ruled out. We get this one into the main development region here. It is very possible that we start talking more in the way of tropical storm, maybe Hurricane Erin by the middle of next week. I want to show you the European ensemble members for this. First of all, notice how we have that tropical wave that we talked about a second ago, wave number 1, that's kind of going to be a fish storm. Depending on whether or not it develops, it moves almost straight north-northeast, follows the ridge of high pressure pretty closely. It's an easy one to predict over the next few days where that wave goes. Our main wave, though, which is coming off of Africa towards the Cape Verde Islands, here it is going to move almost directly westward here for the next couple of days. Each one of these little L's that you see is a depiction of what could possibly happen, right? According to the different members of the ensemble. That's what an ensemble is. It's made up of several different members. All the members are really tightly clustered, meaning there's high confidence in this tropical wave, Invest, soon to likely be tropical depression, maybe tropical storm Erin here. Very high confidence that it heads almost straight, maybe a little north and then straight westward through about Tuesday. Remember, it's going to be Tuesday into Wednesday that we start getting possibly and likely a little more development with this one. But then what happens after that? Well, that's the big question. Notice how some of these members kind of start to split a little bit. They're less tightly clustered as we get towards Friday. That's almost a week out. So obviously confidence is starting to decrease in the intensity, but also where this will go. The members kind of split apart. We can expect that. But what we're watching particularly closely is the ridge of high pressure. Area of high pressure, extremely common this time of year across the North Atlantic. So here it is, and this is Friday, where future likely tropical storm Erin is going to go, is going to be very dependent on what happens with this ridge. There's also going to be perhaps a trough that develops here across the southeast, but that's less certain. The main steering mechanism is going to be with this ridge of high pressure as we get towards Friday into Saturday. Again, two scenarios. Stronger ridge likely means that whatever forms out there is going to track right along the edge of that ridge and follow its path, that clockwise flow, meaning it turns north and northeast and recurves out to sea. A weaker ridge means the steering with the high pressure system not going to be quite as potent in relation to that high pressure system. We could get perhaps a little bit more of a straight west or perhaps north track. So that comes into play by next weekend. So here's August 16th through the 17th. And again, confidence right now is so low. You can see all the members, even within this ensemble, start to split as we get towards Saturday, Sunday of next weekend with this tropical wave. And the bottom line is there's still a lot of uncertainty. Maybe today we've seen a tiny bit more in the way of a trend towards a turn out to sea and a stronger ridge of high pressure, but that could flip-flop back and forth tomorrow and next week. So watching it, plenty of time to keep an eye on it. Lesser Antilles up through the southeast, want to pay attention to this one just because it is peak season. It's not impossible to get storms to head in that direction this time of year, but it's too early to kind of determine strength, specific impacts, and obviously location. I think towards the middle of next week, we'll start to get a bit more consensus and a little bit higher confidence. So that's what's happening with the tropics. Somebody commented just a few minutes ago and said that things are getting pretty bad in Milwaukee. So let's jump back from tropics for a second and talk a little more about what's happening with the rain in the Midwest and the setup here for the next couple of days, because it's kind of a complicated setup in terms of pinpointing where the heaviest rain is going to be. So clean slate. Let's turn off the excessive rainfall outlook. What you're looking at right now is tomorrow's excessive rainfall outlook by the Weather Prediction Center. We'll keep on our active watches or keep on our active warnings here and kind of address the comment that talked about the heavy rainfall in Milwaukee. So Wisconsin is one of the spots that can definitely expect more flooding through the night tonight. Obviously, you have heavy amounts of thunderstorms, training thunderstorms across southeast Wisconsin. Milwaukee is one of those spots. Let's put this into animation or loop mode over the past several hours and check out the thunderstorms that have just been building for what is this now, 1 to 2 hours over southeast Wisconsin. Torrential amounts of rain. You can see all the red and the orange on the map indicates those downpours, high rainfall rates, and these storms aren't moving all that quick either. The most intense part of this big cluster of thunderstorms that ranges from West Bend all the way down to South Milwaukee is actually about to track through downtown Milwaukee. You can see some of the higher returns and values here west of downtown Milwaukee, and this area that I'm about to circle, just intense and blinding rain in there right now. And so flash flooding risk obviously at play. We have the flash flood warnings for the Milwaukee metro area. I want to show you how much rain has fallen just within the past couple of hours. So this is a look at just within the past hour, the 1 hour rainfall total. Obviously, kind of ranges depending on where you are, but a couple hot spots here in the Milwaukee metro. One of those is west of downtown, and another north of downtown. Just estimates by Doppler radar here of 2 to 3 to 4 inches of rain over the Milwaukee airport and over the city. So flooding's probably starting to take place if it isn't already. Radar and gauge indicated flash flood warning there for Milwaukee, the entire Milwaukee metro, and that big cluster of storms that we saw a second ago likely is going to continue for the next couple of hours. So that's one spot that we're watching the flooding risk. Also watching the chance for flooding developing tonight from northern Kansas into northwest Missouri, Iowa, and then back into western Wisconsin with 2 to 4, maybe 5, 6 inches of rain. Doesn't sound like a ton, but obviously that adds up pretty quickly over a saturated ground, could lead to flooding concerns. A little bit of severe weather out there tonight as well. You can see we have severe thunderstorm warnings that continue here across northern Kansas into southern parts of Nebraska. Considerable tag on this one, severe thunderstorm warning in Kansas for Rock, Smith, Osborne, Eastern Phelps, Western Webster, and Franklin counties for a storm that is producing winds up to 70 miles per hour. So the considerable tag there is for winds up to 70. Also looks like there might be a little spin in here. They have a tornado possible tag on this. Pull the velocity for just a second. And there could be a couple small areas of rotation here. One of those near Smith Center. Another one here kind of straddling the Nebraska-Kansas border southwest of Riverton. Probably not going to get a tornado warning out of this, at least right now. And then as these storms head east, so storms that are in northern Kansas, this big cluster, this big line, heads east tonight, it'll probably weaken some, but slow down. And that's where we get the heavier rainfall rates and the threat for flooding. We also have more storms that are popping up here across southern Nebraska. Those are racing northward towards Lincoln, towards Omaha, going to get heavy rain tonight. And then In Iowa, not a lot of action yet, but there are some remnant boundaries that are left over from earlier storms today. And those boundaries could help reignite thunderstorms, I think a little closer to sunrise tomorrow. But those storms that develop are going to be pretty intense. In fact, here's a look at the computer model. This is the HRRR, high resolution rapid refresh model. For the rest of the night tonight, it picks up pretty nicely on our MCS out across northern Kansas into southern Nebraska. Shows it again weakening, expanding. As it weakens, it'll kind of start to slow down a little bit, produce heavy rain later tonight, closer to sunrise across eastern Kansas, southeast Nebraska, southwest Iowa. Rainfall rates pick up there. And then you get more thunderstorms developing here closer to, here's mid-afternoon tomorrow across Iowa. And again, some of these short-range models, the CAMs, convective allowing models, aren't amazing on picking up on stuff that tends to develop along outflow boundaries. All right, I think that'll be it for tonight's live stream. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. We talked tropics. We talked what's happening with the flooding risk. We'll try to do this more often, jump on and give you updates on